Imagine a world where every professional chef in Japan knows exactly where to go for the perfect knife. That place is Sakai, a city on Osaka Bay, where 90% of professional chefs find their tools. With the rise of TikTok and a booming interest in culinary arts, demand for these unique knives has skyrocketed, and tourists from across the globe are flocking here, eager to find their own piece of art. We'll delve into the history and present-day reality of this remarkable place.
Meet Etsuro Ikegami, an 85-year-old master who, since the age of 15, has arrived at his workshop in Sakai every morning. He's been sharpening knives for over 70 years, inheriting this craft from his father. His hands, calloused from decades of work, confidently wipe a wet blade across your fingers, testing the sharpness. This isn't just sharpening, it's a ceremony, passed down through generations. The history of knife making in Sakai dates back to the 5th century, when blacksmiths arrived in the area to create tools for the construction of Nintoku Tenno Ryo Kofun, one of the largest burial mounds in the world. Edged tools found around these ancient tombs serve as evidence of Sakai's early craftsmanship. By the 12th century, the blacksmiths had moved from making tools for the emperor's tomb to forging swords for the samurai. The port city flourished, and when the Portuguese arrived in the 16th century, the blacksmiths made them the sharpest of knives for their tobacco crops across the world. Shirakami Noriyuki, a curator at the Sakai City Museum, notes that the city's geographical location helped spread Sakai's knife-making fame, as it was a major port and transport hub.
So masterful was the workmanship that Tokugawa shogunate awarded Sakai's knife makers a seal of approval. As time went on, a shift in power meant that rich merchants moved to Osaka, but the knife-making skills of Sakai were never forgotten by Japan's chefs. Now, once again, Sakai's knife makers are catching attention, perhaps spurred on by TV cooking shows and dramas such as The Bear, which feature these tools. International TikTok users are filling their feeds with tips on where to buy the best knives. They are even traveling to Sakai in droves to find their own collector's items. One TikTok user from Toronto, known to her followers as "Hi Hello, it's Mary," visited the forge of 5th-generation blacksmith Misano Tanrenjo and spent $450 for 2 knives, noting it was a great deal compared to prices at home. Naples, Italy-based sushi chef Rafael Herrera created an unboxing video for his followers when he first used his Sakai Kakayuki knife, sharing his excitement.
This surge in excitement has led to an unprecedented export boom. According to Japan Customs, the export value of kitchen knives in 2021 hit a record 12 billion yen, $90 million, a 30% increase from 2020. In response to this explosion of interest, the Sakai Knife Museum CUT opened in 2022. It showcases some of the 200 types of knives that have been created throughout the city's history, from samurai swords to oversized Maguro Bocho tuna knives that need to be held by 2 people. At the museum's center is a towering chandelier dripping in blades, representing the different stages of knife making. And this isn't just about the past. Nikkei Asia reported that the store underneath the museum exceeded 100 million yen, over $650,000, in sales in 2023, and expects another record year in 2025.
The actual making of knives in Sakai hasn't changed for over 600 years. Each tool is made by not 1, but 4 different companies. This division of labor ensures that each stage of knife production receives expert attention. Blacksmiths forge the knife using iron and carbon steel. Sharpeners refine the blade to perfect sharpness. Handle makers create bespoke handles out of, perhaps, magnolia wood, water buffalo horn, or ebony. Wholesalers attach the handle, engrave the brand on the blade, and sell the knives, also offering sharpening services. Sakai is home to around 75 knife-making companies, including makers and wholesalers. Eric Chevalier, a curator at the museum, came to Sakai in 2012 from his homeland of Paris, France, to study the 5th century tomb. However, fate had other plans. He ended up working for 5 years as an apprentice for one of Sakai's famed blacksmiths, Yasuhiro Hirakawa. We drank a lot of sake, we became friends, and he asked me to be his apprentice, Chevalier recalls. Each day, the young Frenchman chopped charcoal for the forge, cut pieces of steel, cleaned the workshop, and most importantly, watched the 22nd generation blacksmith at work without uttering a word. When Chevalier first slid back the wooden door to the 150-year-old forge, it was like he had stepped back in time. There was no concrete on the floor, it was just dirt. The 5 Japanese apprentices who had joined Chevalier quickly fell out of love with the slow-paced tasks and chose other careers, but the Frenchman was determined to see the training through. Chevalier was only allowed to forge blades at night in his own time, trying to mimic the sights and sounds he heard at the forge during the day. This watch-and-wait mentorship tested Chevalier's stamina. If you're a blacksmith in America or France, you can make a knife after 1 or 2 weeks, he says, but he understood why the process was so long. During a traditional apprenticeship, the student is not allowed to finish a knife. As the blacksmith only forges and doesn't sharpen the knife, the apprentice doesn't have the right to pass his product to the next craftsman for the finishing. It was 8 years before the French apprentice produced a knife that was good enough to hand over to the next artisan.
Now, more than a decade later, Chevalier works in his own 200-year-old forge in Sakai. As he caters to the international market, he tends to make small petty knives for French chefs and 9.5-inch-long kiritsuke knives for Americans and Australians who often work with large pieces of meat. Japanese chefs buy fewer knives than Europeans. A European chef has to cook everything: fish, meat, vegetables, fruits. But a Japanese chef is a specialist. A sushi chef will cut raw fish, some vegetables, so he will have just 3 or 4 knives, says Chevalier. However, as the Cut Museum shows, Sakai's knife makers have over 200 blades in their arsenal. Each one demonstrates not only their artistry, but also Japan's culture. When people visit the museum, Chevalier says, "I hope visitors learn that Sakai is older than Kyoto or Nara." He adds, "It's the origin of many Japanese traditions, such as the tea ceremony, Japanese incense, and traditional knives. If people know that, we can protect the tradition and the real spirit of Japan." As chefs arrive from all over Japan for a bespoke knife, the Sakai knife makers adapt their blades for the needs of different regions. Tokyo. Chefs seek a fish knife with a thicker spine. When they prepare fish, they cut along its back because legend has it that it is forbidden to cut the fish from the front, as it's similar to seppuku. Kyoto. Chefs will prepare an eel by securing it to a cutting board. A heritage Kiyosaki eel blade has a hammer-like, robust spine that can be used to attach the fish to the board. Menkiri, or noodle knife. This rectangular knife is designed to cut a strip of noodles in one stroke, and the handle sits above the blade to ensure a more precise cut. Fuguhiki. This thin and sharp knife is made to cut fugu, a toxin-filled pufferfish. Takato Katano, head chef at Teppanyaki Waho at the St. Regis Osaka, was born in Sakai. When he got his first job as a chef, he followed in the footsteps of other Japanese chefs and visited the 500-foot-long lane of Dogu Yasuji in Osaka, which is filled with specialized catering shops, to buy his first knife. Teppanyaki, or the cooking of proteins and vegetables on a flat-top grill, is characterized by aesthetics and meticulous presentation, so Katana wanted a knife that would help him meet those standards. He held a lot of knives before he found the one that fit him. The first knife that he bought was made by Sakai Takayuki, which was founded in 1947, relatively new by Sakai standards, yet many of its artisans are 4th-generation blacksmiths. "I'm not one of the chefs that has a lot of muscle and power, so I wanted to get something that's light," says Katano. The knife was incomparable. It's just that touch, the weight and sharpness. A knife made in Sakai is highly valued by chefs. It's almost like a brand promise, Katano adds. You don't need to look over the knife. The quality is guaranteed. At the beginning of each week, Katano will take a water stone and sharpen his knives. He says that for him, it's almost ritual. At Itsuro Ikegami's family store, Wado Shoten, I experienced the meditative practice for myself. Found just a few minutes walk away from the CUT Museum, the wholesaler store has a quiet exterior that belies the gems inside.
Amid the boxes of handles and cabinets of sharpened knives, the fifth-generation knife sharpener shares his knowledge with visitors. I join him at a wooden table where he talks me through how I will need to sharpen the blade using 3 different whetstones that have different levels of coarseness. His voice is quiet and croaky, and his knuckles are swollen, showing his age, but his arms are sinewy and his movements swift. He holds the blade at an angle to the whetstone, which he describes as only 2 or 3 coins high, and carefully moves the blade half an inch at a time. He spends the most amount of time sharpening the tip of the blade as it does the majority of the work. The craftsman nods in approval at my attempts to sharpen a knife. Then, he quietly moves to the other side of the table to place the blade on his whetstone, running the knife smoothly down the pastel-colored surface, his eyes never leaving the steel. He knows how to sharpen over 50 different styles of knife to perfection. Ikegami is warm and encouraging, yet my hopes of fast-tracking my apprenticeship are dashed, as he says it takes 10 years to reach competency. Wada Shoten is the 4th stage of the process. The knives that it sells are a mixture of carbon steel and soft steel, made by local blacksmiths and taken from raw metal to cutting quality by sharpeners. Wada Shoten resharpens the blade for sale, and adds the handle. I can take my pick from magnolia wood, oak, sandalwood, and even water buffalo horn. It's clear I am just doing the finishing touches, as one of the artisans engraves my name into the blade. As it's a santoku knife, it's a general-purpose tool that I can use to chop, slice, dice, and mince. I chose a traditional magnolia wood handle that will turn a soft golden color with use, but it's already a thing of beauty as its blade shimmers under the lights of the store. Ikegami holds up a piece of newspaper in front of me, which he encourages me to slice the blade through to demonstrate its sharpness. It cuts through the inky paper like butter. Ikegami assures me that the knife should last 15 to 20 years, but I think that mine might last a little longer, as it seems too special to use. Chevalier says the growing interest in Japanese-style knives has seen some overseas stores turn to Chinese factories to support the rise in demand. It puts pressure on our shoulders because many people can't see the difference between a pure handmade knife and an industrial product. So we have to explain and show more than before to prevent customers making a mistake. The knife maker and curator stresses the importance of holding on to these heritage pieces. He gives talks each week about why we need to protect these skills. The landscape will be challenging for the next generation of knife makers due to multiple large industries in Sakai competing for space, he warns. Nothing is being done to protect this heritage. I feel that half of the blade makers in Sakai will disappear after 15 years because of financial pressure and the lack of place to build an atelier, Chevalier says. But he's still hopeful for the trade. Some young people have interest and want to continue the family business. I'm 36 and my son is 5 years old, and I want him to work with me in the future.